a section of Psalms that are considered the Psalms of Ascent, and they will take us through 135, Psalms 120, and then through 134, as indicated there. I just want us to keep in mind that what the Psalms do, what these Psalms do for the Jews of that day was to capture a picture, a picture of the life of the Jew as he and his family traveled from wherever they lived to Jerusalem to ultimately offer sacrifices in the temple or the tabernacle in the earlier days. The Psalms represent a kind of dependence on the Lord for safety, for security, for their journey. They encountered many things on their way. They encountered friends, they encountered enemies, they encountered sickness, hardship. They always looked forward to the Lord to guide, direct, and protect them as they were on their way. And over time, these Psalms become, for us today, the Christians, they become symbolic or a metaphor for our lives as we journey. We are pilgrims. The Hebrew writer talks about how we journey to a city whose builder and maker is who? God. It's God, okay? We haven't seen that city, but we are living in hope of seeing that city. There's a lot of imagery that comes from Abraham, Genesis the 12th chapter, where God told Abraham to get up from his homeland and go to a place where I will show you. And then once he got him there, he promised blessings and protection and presence as long as Abram and his family were faithful to the Lord. That theme runs throughout the Jews' real lives over time, and it runs through the Christian's life as well. So that's all I want you to do, is just kind of appreciate what the Psalms of Ascent originally were. Their timing was added, their timing of compilation was probably after the return of the exiles from Babylon. And most believe that perhaps Ezra and Nehemiah compiled these, though some of these have specific authors. We'll look at a couple of them today, Solomon being one, David being another. Hezekiah, probably, most commentators think that Hezekiah was the main author of the Psalms of the Ascent. David had about 2 or 3 there, but they give credit to Hezekiah for being the main author. Okay? And so in these Psalms, you see various themes: the ascent to Zion, to travel, looking forward to the expectation of arriving there. They encounter affliction and deliverance. Once there, they enjoy or anticipate the eternal blessings in Christ, we do, as a symbol of what these Psalms mean to us today. And in some of the Psalms, you can actually hear the harmony and the discord and the peace and the fear, the anxiety. And we're going to see that in some of those. Okay? So now, let's begin and look at Psalms 126. Everybody at verse 1 say amen. Okay, when the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. And they said among the heathens, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. And they that sow in tears will reap in joy. He that goeth forth and reapeth, bearing precious seed, some doubtless come again with rejoicing, bring in his sheaves with him. Okay? This particular psalm, there are a couple of things that ought to immediately come to your mind when you think about this. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion. That phrase, commentators debate over whether or not that phrase actually sets the timing of this. Some say, well, this points back to the time that the Assyrian nation came up against Jerusalem, and God turned away that captivity. Others believe, it's more appropriately addressed at the exile and how the Jews came out of exile and moved back to Jerusalem. And I tend to agree with that perspective, though you may agree with either perspective based on your study and based on your appreciation of that particular psalm. But let's look at it from the latter perspective. If the Lord turns away, or if the Lord restores the fortune, some versions say it that way, and we talk about the Jews as a nation, does that conjure up the idea of the Jews being in Babylonian captivity and the Lord now freeing them under the decree of Cyrus? There are several psalms you might run into that talk about how the Jews fared in Babylonian captivity. They had been there. How long was that captivity? 70 years. 70 years. And so a whole generation of people have come up and died in captivity. Okay? But I think verse 1 kind of captures the notion of the Jews who were there at the time, saying, we were like them that dream. Sometimes you can be so accustomed to difficulty, hardship, anxiety, that when it is eliminated, when it no longer exists, it's almost like you were in a dream. I've often shared certain events in my life where I literally went to bed in one frame of mind and got up the next day and things were completely the opposite. And it was almost as if last night was a dream. Anybody been like that? Anybody have a life experience like that? And at the end of this lesson, one of the applications I have that kind of relates back to this psalm is that if you can explain it, God didn't do it. Okay? But if you can't explain it, you might want to look to God. And I've had those situations in life where I've come out of situations, had no idea how I was going to come out of those situations. And it was so drastic from where I was prior that it was like a new day, a new dream. Do you see what that does to the pilgrimage or the pilgrim as he or she moves through life? And God brings them out of one ebb and flow in life and raises them to another level of existence, or another level of appreciation. Verse 2 says, our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongues were singing. And then they said among the heathen, the Lord has done great things among them. Okay? Remember, Brother Moon spent a great deal of time when we looked at Nehemiah and Ezra and Esther. He spent a great deal of time with us and showing us the animosity, the hatred, the ridicule that the nations around the Jews who had come back to Jerusalem had for them. And remember, and I think if Brother Moon had a gun and Sanballat stood in front of him, he would have shot him. Okay? Because these people did the heathen ridicule them, but they understood that this was their God working for the Jews at that particular time. He's done great things for us. We are glad. And so we learn to appreciate a God who steps off of eternity and touches us in our lives at a specific point in time when no one else could do it for us but him. So can you see the Jews? Can you imagine the hearts of the Jews when they heard that Cyrus had written a decree and said you could go home? You can go back to Jerusalem? Remember that? Remember? Can you put yourselves in their shoes? Let's look at the rest of the poem. Verse 4 says, turn away our captivity. Okay? As the streams of the south. Okay? Why would that be a phrase or a reference in that psalm? Because they had just talked about how the Lord had turned that captivity in 1. But now again in 4, we come back to this idea of turning away our captivity. When I read this and pondered that, this is what I thought about, and this is what kind of touched my heart. Sometimes the Lord delivers us, but that's not a guarantee that our tomorrows are going to be painless. Okay? That's not a guarantee that our tomorrows won't have trouble. And so sometimes the Lord's deliverance from one situation in life becomes a road to another situation in life where we might again say to the Lord, I need help. I need your assistance. I need your protection. I need your guidance. And we can see that in the life of the Jews. They had been in Babylonian captivity for 70 years, and the Lord now releases them, okay? Frees them, and they come back to Jerusalem. What's in their mind about being in Jerusalem again? What? Being happy because they are at home, right? But what did they find when they got to Jerusalem? They found broken walls, a destroyed temple, burned homes. So all of a sudden that joy as they left Babylon becomes remorse when they get back home, the place where they had longed to be. Okay? And as we walk and determine our ascent to eternity, we're just like those Jews in so many times and so many places. Okay? There's a theme that comes out of this psalm. And first theme is there must be an expression of trust. That's in verses 1 through 3 of 126, okay? A true expression of our trust in God. And then whenever there is pain, verse 4 is an excellent example. Whenever there is pain, then who do we turn to? Realize you can turn to God. There's nothing wrong with going with somebody who's probably been down a road that you're headed down, or going to somebody who has expertise in this area. But in your going, don't forget that the best person you can go to is God Almighty. Okay? Because he has proven reliable, right? Okay? And so that last theme might be an expression of faith. Okay? Verse 5, they that sow in tears shall what? Reap in what? Yeah. How many times has God turned your tears into joy? Regardless of the situation. Okay? He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with what? Rejoicing, bringing in his what? What seeds ought we to carry as Christian people? There you go. Y'all send it to me when you know I should be on the next page there. Thank you, Sister Red. All right? What seeds do we carry? How about seeds of hope? Should the Christian hope? Should the Christian anticipate God's deliverance? Is it appropriate for us to ask? So these precious seeds that we carry forward in our lives, they'll come again with rejoicing, okay? And then those seeds will produce the seeds. Seeds of hope, seeds of faith. And to the extent that we do that, we can be successful pilgrims on this road to eternity. Thoughts, anybody? Okay. Let's look at 127. Except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keeps the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrow, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Okay? What is a major message that you hear in that particular song? Anybody, any thoughts? Hold on a minute, Angela. What? Okay. All right. Blessed is the who walks in his way. Are you're at 127? Okay. Well, hold that thought. We'll get it 128, okay? Sister Angela, your comment. Yeah. Okay. We have a very a solid principle of that in New Testament of the right house. Okay. This psalmist here, it says, except the Lord builds the house. Okay. And he is asking or saying that the message by this is that God's blessing comes on those people whom the Lord keeps and whom the Lord blesses, okay? We are, look at verse 3, we are children of a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Now, before you say or think, well, the Lord is saying that I have to have children to be blessed, that's not the point the psalmist is making here. Children are symbolic or metaphors of what? How about, Innocence? Okay. I know some 2-year-olds that are not so innocent. There you go. Say it louder. The future. The future. Children are symbolic of a promise of the future. All right? The last image you see in this poem about the children, they are now sitting in the gates. Sitting in the gates of the city means that you have some authority, you have some prominence, you have a reputation, and people are looking to you for guidance, okay? And so your children ultimately move from one position and station in life. They are a blessing because they promise the future, and they ultimately see them at the end of this poem or this psalm sitting in the gates. They speak with the enemies of the gates. Happy is the man that has a quiver full of them. In other words, the future, okay? And so, yes, are children a blessing in a literal sense? You betcha. I have two, okay? There's one of them right there. And she's a blessing. I don't care every once in a while. Okay? Thoughts. What I want us to see is that these Psalms are trying to capture life as we move from one station to the next, as we progress through the ups and downs and the ebbs and flow of life. Do you see that? Can you see that in that? Okay. All right. Now, let's move to where Sister Janice wants us to be. You know I couldn't let you off that, don't you? Okay. Let's move to Psalm 128. Okay. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways, for thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands. Happy shalt thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as fruitful as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house, thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord, for the Lord shall bless thee out of Zion, and shall see the good of Jerusalem all the days of his life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's, and peace upon Israel. You see thy children's children, and peace upon Israel. What comes to your mind when you see this? I heard somebody say, I'm sorry? Okay, a blessing out of tribulation, sure. Okay.
God, by us trusting in God, doing that process, of punishment or affliction, whatever it was, the Lord is giving them back, what was taken from them, and they're blessing the Lord for it.
Okay. All right. Certainly, it's how we start off with Psalm 126. Sister Janera.
Is verse 3 in connection to the church?
I'm sorry?
Is verse 3 in connection to the church?
Verse 3. Thy wife shall be a fruitful vine, that one? Is it a connection to the... No, I think it's symbolic of a successful person. Because the wife is one... Look at verse 7. You will eat the labor of your hands. Your crops, your fields will come in. Your wife will be a fruitful vine. Again, a sign of success. The sides of that house, like your wife will be a fruitful vine by the sides of that house. The children will be olive plants around about that table. All of those images come together in a single thought of being blessed by the Lord because you fear. What does fear mean? You respect, you honor, you obey. It also means you're fearful now. Don't ever lose sight of that. Okay, but when I read this psalm, the psalm I think about almost immediately is Psalm 1. Okay, so let's listen to Psalm 1, because I think Psalm 128 kind of spells out Psalm 1 in specificity. But listen to what Psalm 1 says. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinners, nor stirreth in the seat of the scoundrel. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he does meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whithersoever he go, he will prosper. See, all of that kind of ties into verses 3 and 4 in a specific sense to me. So the person who honors God, the person who meditates on his word, the person who reverences God or orders his or her life in accordance to God's will, he's going to be blessed. Now, there are two words in this psalm that are translated blessed, but they come from different Hebrew words. The first one, you see it in verse 2, it says, thou shalt eat the labor of thy hands, happy shalt thou be. Some verses say blessed, but the better understanding is happy that person will be. So that person lives in contentment. That person lives having been successful, okay? The other one is in verse 4, behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. This blessed, Barak, means blessed of the Lord. So one talks about your contentment, your mindset, your state of being, sort of like the Beatitudes, okay? The other says where that blessing comes from, okay? And where do all of our blessings come from? From the Lord, okay? And all, Paul tells us that all spiritual blessings are where? In the Lord, okay? So what we're seeing here is as people move and journey from one location to the other, and in a real sense, from their homelands outside of Jerusalem to ultimately worship the God. That becomes symbolic of our journeys today as we move from our beginnings in our lives towards our ultimate demise. As long as we fear the Lord, as long as we walk in his ways, we shall be happy. We shall be content. We shall be fulfilled, okay? That's not name it and claim it. And that's not saying that every day, 24/7, you're going to have everything you want. Because if we were like that, we'd be too fat to move, okay? All right? But it is promising a state of mind, a state of being, regardless of where you are, regardless of what frame of life you are in, you can still be content in the Lord. And ultimately, you can be content in the Lord because you have been blessed by the Lord. Does that make sense? Sister Jenny? Okay.
As you said, and obeying and everything, those ones that is, together in fear of the Lord, it seems like those blessings start falling through.
Okay. And in a general sense, that's true. What we need to be careful of is hearing absolutism in it. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we believe so hardly that the Lord's going to bless us everything that we get and everything that we do, that we will have no heartaches, we'll have no disappointment, we'll have no pain. That's not taught in Scripture, okay? That I'm not saying you, I have to say that because I want all of us to understand that the blessings that come to us come to us as a part of our life with the Lord. And our life with the Lord is that God will be with us in our ups and our downs. And the guarantee is that just as we are guaranteed ups, we're guaranteed downs. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? Complains? Compliance? Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Compliance means to be in adherence to the word, or in adherence to God, or to do His will. Obedience, yes. Okay. And an individual who fears the Lord does that, and that's what the psalmist is saying in Psalms 1. Okay. If we order, look at it again. If we order our life, if we delight in the law of the Lord, then we'll be like a what? Tree, okay? And the thing about a tree versus a bush is that a tree sends down what? Roots. How deep? Very deep. So that when difficult times come, the tree remains. Okay? Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Any other thoughts? All right, let's move on, if we can. $129. Many a time have they afflicted me from my youth. May Israel now say, many a time have they afflicted me from my youth. Yet they have not prevailed against me. The plowers plowed upon my back. They made long their furrows. The Lord is righteous, and He hath cut asunder the cords of the wicked. Let them all be confounded and turn back that hate Zion. Let them be as the grass upon the housetops, which withereth afore it groweth up, wherewith the mower filleth not his hand, nor he that bindeth sheaves his bosom. Neither do they which go by say, the blessings of the Lord be upon you. We will bless you in the name of the Lord. What are you hearing in that phrase? Okay. Okay. Notice how that theme repeats itself in the first two verses there. Many a time have they afflicted me from my youth. May Israel now say, many a time have they afflicted me from thy youth. Here's the important thing. Yet they have not prevailed against me. Will we suffer persecution as a people? Will we suffer ridicule as a people? Will there be enemies who treat us wrongly? All right. Will they succeed? Now, you're not saying no as loud as you were saying yes. All right. Who look here. When your storm is bigger than your God, you're going to have problems. Okay? I remember preaching a sermon, and I mentioned the song, If You Can't Make It Through the Storm. Many of you know that song. Okay? And I made the point that when you focus on the storm, you lose focus on God. I had a young lady come to me and she said, Brother Thompson, you don't know my storm. And I said to her, no, I don't know your storm, but I know our God. And I'm not ridiculing her, because when our storm is raging, it's hard to focus sometimes. When our storm is billowing, it's hard for us to hear the voice of our God who says, in the middle of the storm, peace, be still. So be mindful of that. Mindful of the human tendency to fear, to despair. Sister Janice brought up, I see your hand, Sister Neer, I'm going to come back to you. Sister Janice brought up something last Lord's Day, I believe it was last Lord's Day, where Paul was talking about despairing and whether or not God will put on us things greater than we can bear. And I want to show you Paul's response to that idea. Okay. 2 Corinthians 1. 2 Corinthians 1 and verse 5. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also abounded by Christ. And whether we be afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation, which is effectual in the hearing of the same sufferings which we also suffer. Or whether we be comforted, it is for your consolation and salvation. And our hope of you is steadfast, knowing that as partakers of the sufferings, so shall ye also be of the consolation. For we would not, brethren, have you ignorant of our trouble which came on us in Asia, that we were pressed out of measure above strength, insomuch that we despaired even of our lives. So there are times, sometimes, where life can press on you, okay, beyond your ability, okay? But when that happens, God delivers us, okay? And he delivers us so that we will learn to depend on him, okay? And so persecutions will come, afflictions will come. The psalmist here says, yet they have not prevailed against me. But that requires that you and I have a degree of steadfastness, that we hold on. Okay? Sister Danira.
I was just going to bring up Peter walking to Jesus on water.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as he focused on Jesus, he
Yeah.
was fine. But when he focused on the wind and waves,
Yeah. Yeah. Sister Joyce?
There's a scripture that says, all those who live righteously will suffer.
What's up? Peter says that, yes. I'm having trouble because my forgetter is working with the exact verse, but I'll get that verse back here. Yes, sir. Like the, yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Now keep in mind, I remind us as many times as I can, it's easy to say this. The walk is tough, okay? And I give you prime examples. Peter, the night that Christ was betrayed, when Christ says, I go to Jerusalem, and I am going to be sacrificed, and you will desert me. And Peter says, no, Lord, no. All these dudes might, but I won't. And before the night was over, he had denied him. That's what's so significant about the message that the angel gave to Mary when he said, tell my disciples and Peter. Because when you fail, you feel so full of guilt that sometimes you and I need to be reminded that God's beyond our guilt. Okay? And he will see us through that if we trust him, if we depend on him. Okay? Did I see another hand somewhere? All right. Here's some things I think this Psalm tells us there are three basic instructions that we need to understand when we are suffering for Jesus, okay? We need to accept it. Verses 1 and 2 basically says that, okay? We need to benefit from it, okay? When the Lord allowed Babylon, Isaiah uses the same language that Babylon plowed through Israel, okay? So when the Lord allowed Nebuchadnezzar to plow through Israel, okay, if you look at the symbolism there, he made deep, long furrows. But the Lord will allow us to survive that. The Lord allowed Egypt to subjugate Israel. The Lord allowed the Canaanites in Canaan to torment and persecute Israel. The Lord allowed Babylon to subject Israel to captivity. But he broke their, so in each of the examples I gave you, God broke the chains of captivity and delivered his people. So how can we benefit from that? I can benefit from it if I understand that no matter what I'm going through, God will ultimately bless me to bear it if I trust him, if I depend on him, okay? And then the last thing is that I've got to be committed to the Lord, okay? Verses 5 says, let them that be confounded turn back, that hate Zion. Let them be as grass upon the housetops, which withereth before it is gone. Verse 8, neither do they which go by say, the blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you in the name of the Lord. Sometimes some things are beyond our pay grade, our paycheck, if you will. And so if we give these things, if we give these situations to the Lord and not seek our own vengeance and not seek our own revenge, then nobody can fix it like the Lord fixes it. Is that right? Okay. Got 2 more to go. And I notice my time. Thanks, Brother Steve. $130. This is a psalm that kind of resonates with me. And it kind of resonates with an earlier song that we saw this morning. All right, Psalms 130 says, out of the depths I have cried unto thee, O Lord. Hear my voice. Let thine ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. If thou, Lord, should maketh inquiries, who shall stand? For there is forgiveness with thee, that thou mayest be feared. I wait for the Lord, my soul doth wait, and in his word do I hope. My soul waiteth for the Lord more than they which watch for the morning. I say more than they that watch for the morning. Let Israel hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is mercy, and with him is plenteous redemption, and he shall redeem Israel from all his iniquities. Bless you. Listen to the psalmist here. Out of the depths I have cried unto thee. Has anybody been there before? Okay. Let thine ears be attentive to the voice of my, what? Supplications. If you are a Christian, and I'm not doubting anyone in here, I'm just trying to make a point, then you have a daily, powerful prayer life. I will go so far to say that if you're a Christian, you pray every day. And not just once a day. Okay? You pray when it is good as well as when times are difficult. But we get in touch with these emotions more often when we are having difficult times. Okay? And so the psalmist sometimes can be raw with us. He says, out of the depths I have cried to thee, O Lord. Hear my voice. Let thine ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. Any example of people who had deep prayer, deep supplications to the Lord? Who? David is a good one. Yes. Okay. Who? Jonah. Jonah's, I love Jonah. You know what Jonah's prayer was? Jonah's prayer was, thank you for the fish. Because there was too much water to swallow. And the fish actually saved his life. Okay, read Jonah 2. That's what Jonah 2 is all about. Sister Red. Nehemiah. Yeah. Nehemiah. Hezekiah. Remember when the Rabshakeh came up against Jerusalem? What did Hezekiah do with the letter he gave him? He went to his bedroom and laid it on the bed and said, Lord, look at here. Look at here. How about Hannah? All right. Who? Esther. All right. So many of us have been here, okay? And we've asked the Lord, just hear me. Now, here's the interesting thing about it. You can't be full of yourself. You can't be full of yourself. If thou, Lord, shouldest mark inquiries, I'm not inquiries, what is that? Iniquities. What does mark mean? If you write it down, if there is a ledger of my iniquities, who's going to stand? None of us. Aren't you glad the Lord doesn't mark your iniquities? Aren't you glad that the Lord remembers he loves you and not that you sinned? Okay? Aren't you glad that the Lord's not like some of us? Because see, Brother Columbus, if you do me wrong, I'm writing it down. And there will come a point in time where I might have an opportunity just to get back with that. I will remember it. This is De Niro.
I was just going to say, Jesus prayed for the church before he went to the cross.
Okay. What's more interesting is he prayed for those who crucified him. He prayed for those who were going to betray him. Okay? He set the ultimate example. Okay? But our iniquities, here's the good thing about it. What the psalmist is saying here, in spite of my sin, in spite of my unworthiness, you hear me. More importantly, I'm going to cry out to you. Does that make sense? Okay? That's Job 14 right there. Okay? Folks, we need to be more patient. We need to wait on the Lord. And if you ask me, there are enough examples in scriptures that says when you don't wait on the Lord, you mess it up. Okay? And so what the Christian does is waits for his or her delivery or deliverance. This is Janice? Okay, yeah. Again, what that means, and this is why it's difficult for some of us, is that we don't see God's playbook. Okay? We don't see what God is doing as easily as God sees and knows what he's doing. Okay? We don't know how God is working through us specifically. We know he works through us, or he can work through us. Okay? But because we don't see the playbook, it becomes difficult for us sometimes to kind of hold on and hang in there and be patient. And so many of us, or too many of us, pray that the Lord fixes something, and then when we get up off our knees, we go try to fix it. And why, if you're going to do something about it, don't pray. Okay? If you're going to pray, leave it alone. All right? Thoughts, ideas? All right. We're going to do 131, and then I'm going to leave all 17 verses of 130 to you on your own. This one was written by David. It says, Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor my eyes lofty. Neither do I exercise myself in great matters, or in things too high for me. Surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forevermore. Why is David the person to say that? I think the reason David can say that is because from the very beginning of his time with the Lord, he's been successful. Okay? Before he was king, he was a warrior in the army of Israel. And so his campaigns would go out, and Saul's campaigns would go out, and the women of the city would greet Saul and say, he's slain his what? Thousands, but David has slain his tens of thousands, okay? Saul chased David all over Canaan and could not capture him. God delivered Saul into David's hands at least on 2 occasions, and David was close enough to cut his throat. But he says, I will not kill or lift my hand against the Lord's anointed, okay? David faced a 9-foot giant, cut his head off, took his armor, brought it to Jerusalem, set it down, and proclaimed victory. When he became king, he had a civil war, and ultimately he joined 2 nations, northern Israel and southern Israel, into one nation, with the capital of the city being in Jerusalem. So when you go back and you look at David's life, it looked like everything he touched turned to gold. He had the Midas touch. But he was humble enough in this psalm to say, I can't let it go to my head. Now, what that says to us is this. Have you been blessed? Let me ask this, because this group over here don't know they've been blessed or not. Have you been blessed? Yeah, okay. All right. You've been blessed. God's been good to you, right? Okay? It's easy for you to get your big head, right? Sometimes you think, well, I got it made, right? But, remember that in all your blessings, God is there. And your blessings are because God is there. So don't become haughty or high-minded or too holy. Here's some thoughts that we will leave you with. If you can explain what's going on, God did not do it. Okay? And when you look at 126, we see God delivering his people from situations, from difficulties in life that was beyond their ability to extradite themselves from that. Okay? So if you can explain it, God didn't do it. It's kind of a facetious look or phrase that says, I'm going to recognize that there are just some things beyond my limitation and God is in control. Okay? The fear of the Lord is the key. The fear of the Lord is the key to being happy, contented, satisfied with what God has done, and blessed because God is the source of that blessing. Okay? And that's a play on the two Hebrew words that are recorded as blessed in the Psalms that we looked at. And then as we come out of the last thought there, in spite of our iniquities, we should do what? Trust and patiently wait on the Lord. Any final thoughts or comments? Thank you for listening and being attentive. I'm hopeful that I've been able to say some things or to go over some thoughts and some ideas that help us on our walk towards eternity. There's one thing I want to say this. As we've been looking at these Psalms, there's a theme in all of these Psalms that you should be hearing over and over again. And that theme is that God is with his people, okay? As we have difficulties and challenges in life, God will see us through them. We will always be in storms, one way or the other, but God is greater than our storm, okay? Trust, fear, wait on the Lord. In all the Psalms we've seen, those themes come back over and over again, different ways that they're said, but the same things come back over and over again. That's the most consistent message that comes through all of these Psalms. 150 times, and I think we need to get the point. Thank you.